In 2012, researchers at Harvard discovered something astonishing. People who learned to reinterpret their stress, who stopped seeing it as a threat and started seeing it as preparation, actually lived longer, healthier lives than those who constantly feared it. Think about that. The very thing most of us are running from, stress, could actually be the doorway to strength, wisdom, and resilience. When you feel your heart racing before an exam, when the bills pile up at the kitchen table, when your mind is overwhelmed at 2 a.m., that pressure isn't here to destroy you. It's here to transform you. Because sometimes the weight pressing hardest on your chest is the hand of God reshaping you for something greater. There is a reason that stress exists, and is not the reason most people think. Stress has been painted as a curse, an enemy, something to fight against with all our strength. People rush to escape it, medicate it, silence it, or pretend it doesn't exist. But stress itself is not the enemy. Stress is a message, a signal, and in many ways, a divine tool placed in the human journey. When we open our eyes to this truth, we begin to see that stress is not the proof that God has abandoned us. It is one of the most undeniable signs that He is preparing us for something we cannot yet see. Think about this. Every great transformation in nature happens under stress. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly in comfort. It wrestles inside a cocoon that feels like a prison. The seed does not become a tree unless it is buried in the darkness of the soil and pressed by the weight of the earth above it. Gold does not shine until it has faced the fire. Diamonds are not born without crushing pressure. Stress is woven into the very fabric of creation as the process that unlocks hidden potential. If this is true in the natural world, why would it not be true in the spiritual and psychological world as well? God does not waste pain. He does not create stress without purpose. C.S.LEWIS once said that hardship often prepares ordinary people for extraordinary destiny, and that is the lens through which we must look at stress. Is not a meaningless wave crashing over your life, is a sculptor's hand shaping your character, chiseling away fear, ego, and weakness so that the image of strength, wisdom, and resilience can emerge. When Jesus walked in Gethsemane, He did not feel calm, relaxed, or free from stress. The Bible tells us that His sweat fell like drops of blood. That was not serenity. That was the weight of unimaginable stress pressing down upon Him. Yet that night of agony was the preparation for resurrection morning. Stress was the shadow that stretched across His path before the greatest victory in history. If the Son of God Himself faced a moment where stress seemed unbearable, why should we see our own seasons of stress as signs of failure? They are not curses. They are confirmation that something greater is on the horizon. In our modern lives, stress often comes in less dramatic forms, but feels just as heavy to the one carrying it. A teenager sitting in a quiet room staring at a textbook, terrified of failing an exam, feels a weight pressing down on the chest. A father staring at unpaid bills under the dim kitchen light feels the pulse of fear racing through his veins. A mother lying awake at night wondering how she will raise her children in a world that seems filled with chaos feels the tension grip her heart. Stress whispers in 1,000 ways, and each time it whispers, it tempts us to believe that we are weaker than the weight we carry. But the truth is the opposite. Stress is the very proof that we are being invited to grow into someone stronger. Science gives us clues that align with this divine perspective. When the body faces stress, it releases hormones that prepare us to fight, endure, and focus. While prolonged, unmanaged stress can harm, moments of stress sharpen our senses and increase our capacity. Just like a muscle grows only after being broken down under resistance, the soul grows only after being stretched under the pressure of life's demands. If you were never stressed, you would never discover the edges of your strength. Without stress, you would never reach beyond your comfort zone, never build resilience, never experience the exhilaration of overcoming what once terrified you. Stress, then, is not simply the weight of life. It is the gym where your spirit is trained. Think about students preparing for a major exam. The nights of worry, the hours of study, the nervous tension, they all feel like suffering in the moment. Yet what does that stress produce? Discipline, endurance, knowledge, maturity. Without that stress, the student remains unprepared for the challenges that the real world will demand. Now magnify that lesson to every area of life. The stress of a broken friendship teaches the depth of loyalty. The stress of financial strain teaches the power of resourcefulness. The stress of sickness teaches the preciousness of health. Stress is the teacher we never invited, but the one we desperately need. There are countless examples of people who would testify that the stress that once felt unbearable was the very force that forged their destiny. A soldier who once trembled in fear on the battlefield later carries the strength to lead others with courage. A single parent who thought she would collapse under the stress of holding her family together eventually stands as a pillar of resilience, admired by her children. A small business owner who once lost everything under financial pressure rebuilds with wisdom and determination, creating something far greater than before. These stories remind us that stress is not the end of the story, is the difficult chapter that makes the victory worth reading. But here is the critical point: the transformation that stress brings is not automatic. Some people break under stress because they believe the lie that stress means defeat. Others rise under stress because they believe the truth that stress means preparation. The difference lies in perspective. When stress arrives, do you see it as a signal that you are weak, or as evidence that God is about to show you a strength you did not know existed? The way you frame stress determines whether it crushes you or creates you. C.S.LEWIS once described pain as God's megaphone to rouse a sleeping world. Stress works the same way. It wakes you up. It shakes you from the illusion of comfort and forces you to confront what matters. Stress strips away illusions. It strips away the false belief that we are in control of everything. It strips away our pride and forces us to lean on something greater than ourselves. In the breaking, something beautiful emerges. A soul that has walked through stress with faith becomes unshakable. A heart that has endured pressure with courage becomes unbreakable. A mind that has faced tension with wisdom becomes unstoppable. Many people pray for God to remove their stress, when often what they truly need is for God to reveal the purpose inside their stress. If you are in a season where stress feels overwhelming, it may be that heaven is whispering, "I am preparing you." You are being prepared for a responsibility you cannot yet see. You are being strengthened for a future challenge that would destroy you if you were not forged in this fire first. You are being refined, polished, stretched, and equipped. And when you come out of this season, you will not just be the same person you were before. You will be someone wiser, stronger, and closer to the person God designed you to be. Stress is the wilderness before the promised land. Stress is the storm before the calm. Stress is the cross before the crown. No story of greatness was ever written without it. Look through history, and you will see that the people we admire most were the ones who faced stress and refused to give up. They endured because they knew there was something greater hidden inside the weight. And that is why you must not despise the stress you carry today. It is not your enemy. It is your teacher, your trainer, your divine preparation. So when you wake up with that familiar knot in your stomach, when the deadlines seem impossible, when the nights are restless, do not only ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask instead, "What is this shaping inside me?" Because stress is not here to steal your destiny. Stress is here to deliver it. And the very weight that feels like it might break you could be the same force that makes you unbreakable. And so, if you remember nothing else, remember this truth: your stress is not meaningless, is not wasted, is not proof of weakness. It is the evidence of transformation. It is the divine tool by which God chisels away the old and makes room for the new. And one day, when you stand on the other side of the season, you will look back and realize that the very thing you thought would destroy you was the very thing that saved you. Stress often feels like an unwelcome guest that barges into our lives without permission. The pounding heartbeat before speaking in front of a crowd, the sleepless nights before a job interview, the tension in the chest while waiting for medical test results. All of these moments make us wish stress never existed. Yet if we strip away the emotions for a moment and look at how stress functions in the body, we find something remarkable. Stress is not designed to destroy us, it is designed to prepare us. The very biology of stress reveals a story of growth, survival, and hidden strength. Inside your body is a God-given system called the stress response. When pressure shows up, the brain signals the release of adrenaline and cortisol. These chemicals increase your alertness, sharpen your memory, and give you the energy to respond. This is why your heart beats faster, your senses feel sharper, and your body feels restless under stress. It is not your body betraying you, it is your body preparing you. Long before the modern world, our ancestors depended on this very system to survive. When danger appeared, the stress response equipped them to fight or to flee. Today, the dangers look different, but the system remains the same. Standing on stage with trembling hands feels terrifying, but inside your body, the same response that once helped someone outrun a predator is now helping you find focus, courage, and energy for the moment you face. Scientists call this positive side of stress eustress. It is the type of pressure that challenges you without destroying you. Just as lifting weights tears small fibers in your muscles so they grow stronger, eustress stretches your mental and emotional limits so you develop resilience. Think of a student who pushes through the stress of difficult exams. At first, the late nights and constant studying feel like suffering. Yet after the test, something changes. The brain has adapted to longer focus, deeper learning, and sharper recall. The stress that once felt unbearable actually built mental stamina. Stress became a personal trainer for the mind. In the world of athletics, this truth is even clearer. Picture an athlete standing on the starting line of a race. The crowd is loud, the air is electric, and stress fills the body like a flood. Muscles tighten, breath quickens, and adrenaline surges. To an untrained observer, it might look like weakness. But ask the athlete, and they will tell you this stress is power. It heightens reaction time, fuels strength, and sharpens focus. That moment of pressure is not an obstacle. It is the very fuel needed to run with speed and endurance. In this way, stress becomes an ally, not an enemy. God has woven this design into creation itself. Nothing grows in stillness alone. Muscles grow through resistance. Trees grow stronger when winds press against them. Minds grow sharper when challenged by problems that seem unsolvable. Stress is the mechanism that pushes us beyond what is comfortable so we can discover what is possible. If comfort was all we ever knew, we would remain fragile. It is stress that breaks the illusion of weakness and proves the hidden strength God planted within us. Yet science and faith both show us that the key is not in escaping stress, but in how we interpret it. Psychologists conducted a study that revealed something astonishing. People who believed stress was harmful experienced more health problems and shorter lives, even when their stress levels were low. People who believed stress was preparing them for growth lived longer and healthier, even with high levels of stress. The difference was not the amount of stress, but the mindset toward it. This shows us something powerful. Stress does not destroy us by itself. The way we interpret stress determines whether it becomes poison or power. This is where faith steps into the conversation. Scripture reminds us in Romans 5 verses 3 to 4, we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. Stress, then, is not meaningless suffering. It is a process of growth. It builds patience, shapes character, and leads to hope. Science affirms what Scripture has declared for centuries. Stress can be the soil where strength is planted. Take the example of Thomas Edison, who faced failure after failure in his experiments. Each failed attempt carried stress, disappointment, and pressure. But instead of interpreting stress as a sign of defeat, he reframed it as preparation. That reframing allowed him to endure and keep creating until light emerged, literally. His story shows us that stress does not stop invention. It becomes the necessary fire through which ideas are tested and refined. Without the stress of failure, the discovery of a light bulb may never have happened. In everyday life, this principle is just as true. A single mother working 2 jobs feels the weight of stress every day. Bills, deadlines, children to care for, her body often aches with exhaustion. Yet within that stress, she discovers resilience she never knew she had. She learns how to multitask with precision, how to stretch every dollar, how to fight for her children's future with passion. Stress becomes her training ground, shaping her into a leader, a protector, and a warrior. When her children grow, they look back not only at her sacrifices, but at the strength forged through stress. That strength becomes her legacy. A young man starting a business faces endless stress, financial risks, sleepless nights, constant problem solving. Many give up because the pressure feels unbearable. But those who endure find that stress sharpens their decision-making, toughens their resolve, and deepens their creativity. The very pressure that nearly broke them becomes the reason they rise with wisdom others never gain. Success without stress rarely lasts, but success forged through stress becomes unshakable. On the psychological level, stress is a master teacher. It reveals what we value, where we are afraid, and what we must change. Stress is often the signal that growth is near. A student stressed about speaking in public may one day discover a calling to leadership once they learn to use that stress as energy for confidence. A young couple stressed about finances may one day build a business that frees them and blesses others. A person stressed about health may one day inspire others through the discipline of overcoming illness. Stress is the signal that something inside us is being called to rise higher. C.S.LEWIS often spoke of pain and struggle as tools through which God awakens the human soul. Stress functions in this same way. It rouses us from complacency. It reminds us that we are alive. It forces us to lean into wisdom, courage, and faith. Without stress, we might never pray deeply, never fight passionately, never grow into the people we were meant to be. Stress becomes the tool through which God whispers, "There's more inside you. Step into it." The modern world tells us to eliminate stress at all costs. Buy the product that makes life easier. Take the shortcut that avoids pressure. Escape the tension as quickly as possible. Yet the lives that shine the brightest, the ones remembered with respect and admiration, are not the ones who avoided stress. They are the ones who walked through stress and allowed it to transform them. The fire that threatened to consume them became the fire that refined them. Think of the American generation that endured the Great Depression. Their stress was overwhelming: financial collapse, uncertainty, hunger. Yet out of that season emerged what many call the greatest generation, a people of resilience, grit, and gratitude. Their stress became the soil of wisdom and endurance. Without it, the strength of that generation might never have been revealed. Stress, then, is not simply a scientific reaction or psychological state. It is a bridge between the divine and the human. It is a reminder that growth always carries weight. It is the pressure through which potential is revealed. And when we shift our perspective, we stop running from stress and start walking through it with purpose. The next time stress visits, feel the heartbeat racing, the palms sweating, the tension rising. Recognize it not as an enemy, but as a signal. It is your body and your soul saying, something is happening. You are being stretched. You are being prepared. And when you accept stress as part of your growth, you discover that the weight pressing on you is not there to crush you, but to build you. This is the science of stress and growth, God's design written into your biology, psychology, and spirit. The same system that once kept our ancestors alive now prepares us for dreams bigger than ourselves. Stress sharpens the mind, awakens the heart, and strengthens the soul. It is not easy. It was never meant to be, but it is good. And when you embrace it, you step into a life not limited by fear, but expanded by courage. Stress often enters our lives like an unwelcome storm. The sky was clear, the air was calm, and then out of nowhere, clouds gather, winds howl, and rain lashes against the windows of our hearts. In those moments, most people only see the destruction. They see the broken branches, the flooded streets, the chaos. What they rarely see is the hidden work the storm is doing, the way it waters the soil, strengthens the roots, clears the old to make way for the new. Stress is much like that. It feels chaotic, loud, and disruptive, yet beneath the surface, something is being revealed. Stress has a way of uncovering potential that was buried so deep we didn't even know it was there. When life presses you with stress, it is often pointing you toward a strength you did not know you had. Think about the times you were placed in situations you never thought you could survive. Maybe you lost a job and thought the floor had fallen beneath your feet. Maybe you were thrust into the role of caregiver for a loved one and thought the responsibility would crush you. Maybe you faced rejection so painful it made you question your worth. In those moments, stress was not just exposing weakness, it was revealing potential. It was pulling back the veil and saying, you are capable of more than you realize. C.S.LEWIS once wrote that hardship often prepares ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. That preparation is not gentle. It is not soothing. It comes through stress that stretches us beyond what we thought possible. A mother raising children alone in New York City, juggling 2 jobs and endless bills, feels like stress is her constant companion. Yet what is happening inside her? She is becoming organized, resilient, creative. She learns to find solutions quickly, to fight for her children with a strength that shocks even her. The stress that seemed unbearable becomes the very thing that uncovers leadership, courage, and wisdom she did not know she carried. Stress is often the alarm bell of untapped potential. It signals areas where growth is possible. A person who feels stressed about speaking in public may think it is proof of weakness. Yet what if that stress is not weakness at all, but an invitation? The trembling hands and racing heart may be pointing to a hidden gift of communication, waiting to be uncovered. The stress is not saying, you cannot do this. It is whispering, "There is something powerful here, but it must be refined." Stress becomes the indicator of where destiny is pressing against the walls of your current comfort zone. Think about a lump of clay in the hands of a sculptor. At first, it looks shapeless, ordinary, without promise. But as the sculptor presses, shapes, and stretches it, a form begins to emerge. The pressing is not punishment. It is creation. Stress is the divine pressing of the soul, molding us into something greater. Without that pressing, we would remain shapeless. With it, we begin to discover form, beauty, and purpose. Many times, people pray for their stress to disappear. They ask God to take it away, thinking it serves no purpose. Yet often, that stress is the very thing pulling out a hidden gift. A young man stressed about financial struggles may one day realize he was being prepared to manage resources with wisdom and generosity. A woman stressed about loneliness may discover a deeper compassion for others who feel unseen, and from that compassion may be born a ministry or movement that touches countless lives. Stress is rarely random. It often points to the very area where potential is buried. The beauty of stress is that it introduces us to parts of ourselves we would never meet in comfort. Comfort lulls us into believing that what we are is all we will ever be. Stress shakes us awake. It forces us to confront fears, to stretch into unfamiliar territory, to dig deeper than we thought possible. It is like standing at the edge of a cliff, terrified of the height, only to realize that wings you never knew existed were waiting to unfold. Stress is the cliff that reveals the wings. Think of a young athlete who dreads training under a demanding coach. Every practice is stressful, every drill exhausting. Yet through that stress, something extraordinary happens. Muscles grow, discipline sharpens, confidence builds. Without that stress, the athlete remains ordinary. With it, the athlete rises to levels of performance once thought unreachable. Life works in the same way. Stress is the coach we did not choose, but desperately need. There's a story often told about a diamond. Before it becomes brilliant, it is just a piece of carbon, unremarkable, overlooked. But under pressure, under unimaginable stress, the carbon transforms. It becomes the hardest, most radiant stone known to man. Without the crushing, there is no diamond. Stress is the crushing that reveals what is hidden inside. Many of us live as though we are only coal, but stress reminds us there is a diamond waiting to emerge. The tragedy is that many people misinterpret stress. They see it only as a threat, never as a signal. When stress rises, they retreat, give up, or numb themselves. In doing so, they silence the very signal pointing them to their hidden strength. The person who avoids every stressful situation never grows into their full potential. They remain stuck, safe perhaps, but unfulfilled. Growth demands stress. Transformation demands pressure. Without it, potential lies dormant, never awakened. Think about history. Some of the greatest leaders, inventors, and changemakers were people who faced immense stress. Martin Luther King Jr. lived under constant stress, threats, and pressures most of us cannot imagine. Yet through that stress emerged a voice that reshaped a nation. That stress was not meaningless. It revealed the potential inside him to stand, to speak, to lead. Stress did not disqualify him, it qualified him. On a smaller scale, each of us carries that same truth. The stress you feel about your future may be signaling that you are meant to dream bigger. The stress you feel about responsibility may be signaling that leadership is rising inside you. The stress you feel about relationships may be signaling that you are capable of deeper love and forgiveness than you thought possible. Stress is the invitation to rise, not the condemnation of your weakness. C.S.LEWIS once said that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. Stress is often that shout. It is the divine way of saying, wake up, you are capable of more. It is uncomfortable, yes. It is heavy, yes. But it is also purposeful. It is a signpost pointing you to the path of your greater potential. If we begin to see stress not as the enemy, but as the revealer, everything changes. The next time your heart races, instead of cursing it, listen. Ask yourself, what is this pointing to? What gift, what strength, what potential is being uncovered? Stress is rarely random. It is the evidence that you are standing at the doorway of growth. And those who step through that doorway discover a life richer, deeper, and far greater than they imagined. So do not despise the stress in your life. Pay attention to it. Respect it. See it for what it truly is. Not a weight designed to crush you, but a signal pointing to the diamond within you. Stress is the sculptor, the storm, the coach, the pressure, and the signal. And if you let it, it will reveal a version of you that you never thought possible. Stress is often painted as the villain in our story, the unwelcome intruder that shakes our peace, disrupts our sleep, and makes our bodies feel like they are constantly at war with themselves. Yet what if the truth is far deeper than our cultural narrative allows? What if stress is not here to break us, but to reveal something in us that we would never have seen without its presence? Across every generation, whether you are a teenager preparing for exams, a parent juggling endless responsibilities, or someone in your 70s reflecting on decades of struggle, stress has appeared as a constant companion. But hidden inside that unwelcome companion is a gift that can only be opened through endurance, through trust, and through perspective. There is a reason the human body is built to handle pressure. When your heart begins to race, when your palms start to sweat, when your breath becomes shallow, your body is not betraying you. It is preparing you. Biologists call this the fight or flight response, but modern psychology has gone deeper and discovered that this same biological surge can be reframed as energy, focus, and readiness. People who shift their mindset from "I am anxious" to "I am prepared" perform better in exams, in sports, in public speaking, and even in high-stakes surgeries. That's not accidental. That is by design. It is as if God wired stress into our system not as an enemy, but as a doorway, a threshold we must cross in order to find out what we are really made of. Think about the greatest breakthroughs in human history. Every invention, every act of courage, every leap of faith was born out of moments that were drenched in stress. Martin Luther King Jr. pacing the night before his speeches. Scientists racing against time to find vaccines in the middle of deadly outbreaks. Parents lying awake trying to figure out how to keep their families afloat during financial collapse. In each case, the stress was not just background noise. It was the catalyst. It pushed them to dig deeper, to pray harder, to think longer, to rise higher than they thought possible. Stress stretched their capacity. Without it, they might never have touched the edge of their potential. Now look at your own life. Maybe you are facing exams that feel impossible, or bills that stack higher than your paycheck, or medical results that left your heart sinking. You might think these pressures are here to crush you. But what if these very pressures are the sacred tools God is using to strengthen you? Diamonds are formed under pressure so intense that coal would crumble. Muscles grow only when fibers are torn and rebuilt stronger than before. Seeds push through dark soil and heavy earth before breaking into the sunlight. Stress is the soil, the weight, the resistance that forces your spirit to grow roots so deep and branches so wide that storms can no longer uproot you. There is also a psychological beauty in this. Stress is not neutral. It is a teacher, and like every teacher, it demands attention. It demands that we notice the imbalance in our lives, that we recognize what is truly important, that we stop wasting time on what is shallow and fix our eyes on what is eternal. A teenager stressed about fitting in at school learns that not every opinion matters, and that confidence cannot be borrowed from others. A mother stressed about providing for her children discovers strengths and strategies she never knew she had. A retiree stressed about declining health learns to savor the small joys of life, the sunrise, the laughter of grandchildren, the embrace of friends. Stress is not gentle, but it is honest. It strips away illusions and reveals what matters most. Spiritually, stress has a sacred role. When life feels heavy, when prayers seem unanswered, when nights are sleepless, you are not abandoned. You are being invited into deeper trust. The Bible speaks of trials as refiners of faith, as fires that purify gold. Stress is often that fire. It is the heat that brings impurities to the surface so that what remains is stronger, clearer, truer. God does not allow stress into your life because He delights in your struggle. He allows it because He sees a version of you on the other side that you cannot see yet. Stress is His way of chiseling away at fear, of carving endurance, of shaping wisdom. If you surrender that stress into His hands, what was once a weight will become wings. There are countless stories that prove this truth. Athletes speak of the crushing stress of training, yet it forges the stamina to win. Students speak of the relentless stress of studying, yet it builds the foundation for their future. Survivors of illness recall nights of fear and days of uncertainty, yet those seasons often awaken compassion and clarity that transform not just their own lives, but the lives of others. Stress refines character, awakens empathy, and deepens faith. It forces us to grow in directions we would never willingly choose, but later discover we desperately needed. Now think about how science and faith meet here. Psychologists at Stanford found that people who believed stress had a purpose actually lived longer, healthier lives. Their bodies released fewer harmful hormones. Their blood vessels stayed more relaxed. Their hearts stayed stronger. Faith, in the same way, teaches us that stress has meaning, that trials are not empty, that pain is never wasted. When you put those two truths together, you realize something extraordinary. Both science and faith are whispering the same message. Stress is not here to kill you. It is here to grow you. The danger is not stress itself, but how we interpret it. If we see it only as punishment, we sink into despair. If we see it as preparation, we rise into growth. This is why your mindset matters. Your story is not just about what happens to you, but about what you believe those events mean. Stress that feels unbearable can be the very thing that pushes you into prayer, into community, into resilience, into breakthroughs you never saw coming. The weight that feels suffocating today can be the reason you breathe freer tomorrow. For the teenager, this means your stress about fitting in or passing your exams is not the end of your story. It is the sharpening of your focus, the building of your strength, the preparation for responsibilities far greater than the ones in front of you now. For the parent, the stress of balancing work, bills, and raising children is not meaningless chaos. It is teaching you sacrifice, patience, and a love that endures. For the elder, the stress of declining health or changing times is not evidence that you are forgotten. It is the invitation to lean into wisdom, to pass on stories, to leave a legacy that lives long after you are gone. Stress speaks in a language we rarely want to hear, but if we lean in, we will notice that its words are carved with purpose. Every racing heartbeat is saying, "You are alive, and there is more for you." Every sleepless night is saying, "This matters deeply, and you are capable of rising to meet it." Every overwhelming responsibility is saying, "You are being trusted with something heavy because you are stronger than you know." And every tear shed under the weight of stress is noticed by God, counted and remembered, not as a sign of weakness, but as seeds of strength that will one day bloom. If your life feels heavy right now, if your mind is clouded with stress, hold on to this. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. You are being carved, refined, stretched into a version of yourself that will carry wisdom, resilience, and compassion into every room you enter. Stress is not your enemy. It is the training ground for your destiny. Trust the process. Trust the God who holds you in it. And when you rise from this season, you will see that the very stress you thought was breaking you was the hand of God building you for something far greater than you could have imagined. Stress has a way of making us believe that life is spinning out of control. When it comes crashing into our days, it interrupts the balance we try so hard to maintain, like a storm suddenly ripping through calm skies. The weight sits on our chest, the thoughts race in our mind, and we start to wonder if we are being undone. Yet there is a truth far greater than the storm itself. Stress is not always the sign that something is wrong. It can be the signal that something is being birthed. Growth rarely happens in moments of comfort. Growth arrives when the heart is stretched, when the mind is tested, and when the soul is pressed against the edges of its own limits. That pressure, as painful as it feels, is often the evidence that you are being shaped for something far beyond what you thought possible. Think of the story of a butterfly. Inside the cocoon, the caterpillar does not gently transform. Its body breaks down into something unrecognizable, a process that appears destructive before it becomes beautiful. Scientists have observed that if you try to help the butterfly by cutting open the cocoon early, the wings will not develop strength. The very struggle inside the cocoon, the very stress of pushing and pressing, is what pumps life into the wings. Without the struggle, it will never fly. Stress works in a similar way in our lives. It is not an interruption to the plan, it is part of the plan. The pressure is necessary because it builds strength you will need in the next stage of your journey. So many of us spend our days trying to avoid stress at all costs. And yet, when we look back, we realize that the chapters that changed us the most were not the easy ones. They were the chapters that kept us awake at night, the seasons that pushed us to pray harder, the moments that forced us to rise earlier, work longer, and fight for something that mattered. Stress leaves fingerprints on the person you are becoming. It may feel like a burden, but in reality, it is shaping the very character that will carry you forward. There are people who walk through immense stress and yet emerge stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Why? Because they allowed the stress to do its work. They stopped seeing it only as pain and started recognizing it as preparation. Stress became their teacher instead of their enemy. It taught them to endure. It taught them to adapt. It taught them to listen, to observe, to value time, to protect relationships, and to focus on what matters most. It stripped away what was unnecessary and revealed the strength that was hidden deep within. Science has begun to uncover what faith has been saying for centuries. Studies show that moderate stress actually strengthens the brain, increasing resilience, sharpening memory, and even strengthening the immune system. The stress response, when embraced and reframed, does not just drain us. It energizes us, focusing our attention and heightening our capacity. But when stress is misunderstood, when it is feared or resisted, it poisons the mind with anxiety and the body with exhaustion. This is why perspective matters so deeply. If you see stress as a signal that you are failing, it will crush you. If you see it as evidence that you are growing, it will transform you. From a spiritual lens, stress is never wasted. God does not allow pressure without purpose. Every moment of heaviness, every sleepless night, every overwhelming decision is infused with meaning. Sometimes stress is the tool God uses to move us from complacency into action. Sometimes it is the way He redirects our path when we are drifting toward comfort zones that would limit us. Sometimes it is the fire that burns away what is unnecessary so that only the gold of our true calling remains. The pages of Scripture are filled with men and women who face seasons of intense stress. Moses under the weight of leading a nation, David hiding in caves, hunted by enemies, Esther risking her life before a king, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, sweating drops of blood under the crushing weight of his mission. Each moment of stress was not evidence of abandonment, but of divine purpose being fulfilled through pressure. For someone listening who feels like their stress is too heavy to bear, remember this: you are not carrying this alone. The very presence of God is near to the brokenhearted, close to those under pressure, walking with those who feel stretched beyond their capacity. Your stress is not the end of you. It is the beginning of something greater. That feeling of being stretched is proof that you are still alive, still fighting, still moving toward the person you were created to become. Let's bring this into the context of daily American life, where stress shows up in countless forms. A teenager preparing for college exams feels the tension of late nights, the pressure of expectations, the fear of failure. That stress, though uncomfortable, is building the discipline and endurance they will need not just for school, but for every challenge in adulthood. A parent working 2 jobs to provide for their children feels the exhaustion and strain, but within that stress grows a kind of resilience that leaves a legacy of sacrifice and love. A middle-aged worker carrying the weight of deadlines, bills, and responsibilities feels drained, yet that stress is often the ground where wisdom takes root, where problem-solving skills sharpen, where perseverance grows into mastery. An elder facing the stress of declining health or shifting family roles may feel overlooked, but that pressure often awakens a deeper spiritual wisdom, a capacity to teach and inspire the younger generation with lessons forged in hardship. Stress often pushes us into self-discovery. It forces us to ask hard questions. What do I truly value? What am I capable of? Where am I placing my trust? Without those questions, we would drift through life on autopilot, comfortable but shallow. Stress shakes us awake. It demands that we face the truth, that we confront the limits of our strength. And in doing so, it introduces us to the limitless strength of God. There is a strange beauty in looking back on stressful seasons. In the moment, we often think we will not survive. Yet later, we see that those very moments became the soil of our growth. We see that the weight we carried made us stronger. We see that the prayers we whispered in exhaustion became the foundation of our faith. We see that the nights we thought were endless were actually shaping our endurance. Stress becomes a kind of teacher we resisted in the moment, but thank later in life. Do not underestimate what your stress is building in you. Is carving patience into your spirit, is teaching you endurance when the road is long, is sharpening your focus when distractions scream for your attention. It is stretching your compassion, because only those who have carried heavy burdens learn how to notice the burdens of others. Stress is shaping your story in ways you cannot yet see, but one day you will look back and recognize that the very pressure you hated was the reason you found the strength you needed. You are not weak because you feel stressed. You are human. You are alive. You are in process, and every process worth enduring carries stress within it. If you are building something meaningful, stress will be there. If you are growing into someone wiser, stress will be there. If you are walking toward your calling, stress will be there. It is not the absence of stress that proves you are on the right path. It is often the presence of it, because where there is pressure, there is purpose. Where there is weight, there is growth. Where there is stress, there is the evidence that God is still shaping you into the person He designed you to be. So breathe. Not because the stress will magically vanish, but because the stress itself is not your enemy, is your ally in disguise. It is the cocoon pressing against your wings, the soil pressing against your seed, the weights pressing against your muscles. It is hard, it is heavy, it is uncomfortable, but it is making you into someone you never dreamed you could be. Trust that truth. Trust the process. Trust the God who allows stress not to break you, but to build you into something greater. Stress has a strange way of making us feel like we are walking alone through a crowded world. The tension in the chest, the racing thoughts, the weight pressing down on the shoulders, these feelings convince us that no one could possibly understand what we are going through. Yet what so many fail to see is that stress is not only shaping them individually, but also connecting them to something much larger than themselves. Every person alive carries stress in one form or another. It may look different on the outside, but at its root, it is the same pressure that unites us all as human beings. The teenager worried about fitting in, the single mother worried about rent, the father staring at bills on the kitchen table, the business owner watching numbers fall, the elder dealing with loneliness or declining health. They all carry stress, though the weight rests in different ways. This shared experience can either isolate us or unite us, and that choice makes all the difference. When stress is viewed as an isolating force, it eats away at hope. People begin to believe they are uniquely cursed, that their burden is heavier than anyone else's, that no one could possibly grasp the depth of what they feel. That belief traps them in silence, cuts them off from support, and deepens the wound. Yet when stress is seen as a thread that connects us, the same experience becomes a bridge. Suddenly, the pressure that once seemed unbearable becomes a way of understanding others, of walking with compassion, of reaching out with empathy. Stress, when shared, no longer feels like a prison. It feels like a path toward community, healing, and strength. This is where both psychology and spirituality speak in harmony. Psychologists have studied how social support transforms the way stress impacts the body. People who believe they have strong relationships experience lower stress hormone levels, healthier immune systems, and longer lives. They don't carry less stress, but their perception of it changes because they are not carrying it alone. Faith has long echoed this same truth, reminding us that two are better than one, and that burdens shared become lighter. Stress was never designed to be carried in silence. It was meant to push us into connection, to remind us that we are not islands, but part of something larger, something divine. Think of the last time you shared your stress honestly with someone you trusted. In that moment, the problem may not have disappeared, but the weight shifted. Your breathing slowed. Your shoulders loosened. Your mind, once trapped in circles, began to see a glimmer of hope. That is the power of stress when it drives us toward others instead of away. It deepens bonds, forges friendships, and awakens empathy. The greatest friendships often grow not from seasons of ease, but from walking together through stress, through hardship, through nights that seemed unbearable until shared laughter or a shared tear broke the silence. From a divine perspective, stress is often the tool God uses to draw us not only closer to Him, but also closer to one another. In seasons of ease, pride makes us believe we can handle everything on our own. Stress shatters that illusion. It humbles us, pushes us to cry out, not just in prayer, but also in honest conversations with those around us. It teaches us vulnerability, and in that vulnerability, trust is born. Families learn to lean on each other. Communities learn to carry one another. Strangers become friends because stress revealed the humanity they share. There is another layer to this that often goes unnoticed. Stress can awaken purpose. The very thing that weighs on you might be the reason you step into your calling. A student stressed about injustice may become a lawyer fighting for the voiceless. A parent stressed about medical bills may one day advocate for better health care. A young adult stressed about bullying may turn into a mentor for kids who feel unseen. The stress that felt personal and unbearable often becomes the spark for movements, charities, inventions, ministries, and legacies that touch countless lives. Stress is never wasted when it is transformed into action. Science even shows that stress can heighten creativity. Under pressure, the brain begins to search for solutions it never would have considered in calm times. New neural pathways fire, new ideas emerge, and new patterns are discovered. Some of the greatest works of art, the most groundbreaking inventions, the most life-changing discoveries were born out of stressful seasons. The stress was not the enemy of creativity. It was the birthplace of it. Yet there is still a choice. Stress can harden us or soften us. It can make us bitter or make us better. It can cause us to shut down or to rise up. That choice is made not in the absence of stress, but in how we respond to it. When stress pushes us into isolation, it steals our joy. When stress pushes us into connection and purpose, it becomes the very thing that expands our lives. Think about the resilience that stress builds in families. A parent working long hours, sacrificing sleep, carrying worry, may not realize it, but their children are watching. They are learning about perseverance, about endurance, about love that does not quit. Stress, when endured with courage, becomes a silent teacher to the next generation. Or think about a young person battling stress in school. They may not see it now, but the resilience they are developing is the very strength they will lean on when life throws challenges in adulthood. Stress leaves its fingerprints not only on the one experiencing it, but on everyone around them, shaping communities, shaping culture, shaping the future. There is also a sacred comfort in realizing that God Himself stepped into stress when He walked this earth. Jesus knew the weight of crowds pressing in, the exhaustion of sleepless nights, the agony of betrayal, the crushing fear in Gethsemane. Stress is not foreign to God. He has felt it, carried it, and transformed it into redemption. That means when you are stressed, you are not abandoned in some lonely corner of existence. You are walking a road that even the divine has walked, and that road, painful as it is, leads somewhere greater than you can see right now. For someone hearing this today, maybe stress has become such a daily presence that you wonder if life will ever feel light again. Let this truth settle deep in your spirit. The very weight that feels unbearable can become the reason you rise into a version of yourself you never knew existed. Stress is carving empathy into your soul, resilience into your character, wisdom into your choices, and faith into your journey. It is not a punishment. It is preparation. It is not a curse. It is the sacred chisel shaping you into a masterpiece. So the next time you feel stress pressing against your chest, shift your perspective. Remind yourself that this weight is not here to destroy you. It is here to awaken you, connect you, refine you, and reveal you. You are not weak for feeling it. You are strong for carrying it. You are not alone in the middle of it. You are part of a story that stretches across generations, across nations, across eternity itself. Stress is not the end of your story. It is one of the most powerful chapters in it, and if you let it, it will lead you into a future filled with meaning, purpose, and strength. Stress was never meant to be the enemy that steals your joy. It was meant to be the instrument that sharpens your spirit. Every sleepless night, every racing heartbeat, every burden you've carried has been shaping you into someone unshakable. Fear may have whispered that you're not strong enough, but strength has been growing in you all along. Life is not testing you to break you. It's stretching you to reveal the power already inside you. The storm that feels overwhelming today is preparing the ground for tomorrow's breakthrough. The weight pressing down on you is the very thing building your wings. And when those wings open, you won't just rise, you'll soar higher than the stress that tried to hold you down. Do not run from the pressure. Embrace it as a sacred invitation, because stress is not the sign that you are losing control. It is the evidence that God is still at work, carving you into someone wiser, braver, and stronger than you ever thought possible. And when you walk out of the season, people won't just see someone who survived stress. They'll see someone who was transformed by it. Someone who discovered that the very fire meant to burn them down became the fire that lit their purpose. Someone who carries wisdom in their scars and power in their voice. Someone who can now turn to the next soul drowning in pressure and say, I know what that feels like, but I also know you will rise. So when stress shows up again, and it will, don't let it silence your spirit. Stand tall, breathe deep, and remember this truth. You are not breaking down, you are breaking through.